Have you ever sent a text message and then reread it 15 times before your friend even replied? Or replayed a 5-second interaction from 3 years ago while you were supposed to be falling asleep? That's not a personality flaw. That's your brain running a very specific, very predictable process. And once you see the mechanics behind it, overthinking stops feeling so mysterious. Today we're breaking down 6 reasons your mind loops the way it does, and more importantly, what actually interrupts the loop. Reason 1. Your brain treats unsolved problems like open browser tabs. Picture your computer with 40 tabs open. Even if you're not looking at most of them, your machine is still using processing power to keep them running in the background. Your mind works in a strikingly similar way. Psychologists have a name for this: the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency for unfinished tasks to stay mentally open and keep pulling at your attention, while finished ones quietly get closed and forgotten. This is why a resolved conflict from last month barely crosses your mind, but an ambiguous comment from your boss this morning keeps popping back up uninvited. Your brain isn't malfunctioning, it's just refusing to close a tab it thinks is still loading. Reason 2. Overthinking often masquerades as problem solving. Here's a trap almost everyone falls into at some point: mistaking mental replay for actual progress. You go over a conversation again and again, telling yourself you're figuring out what went wrong. But notice what's actually happening. Are you generating new information, or are you just re-experiencing the same scene from slightly different camera angles? Real problem-solving moves forward. It gathers new facts, tests an idea, reaches some kind of conclusion. Overthinking just circles the block without ever pulling into a driveway. One useful test: ask yourself, have I learned anything new in the last 2 minutes of thinking about this, or am I just replaying it? If the answer is replaying, that's usually your cue that the thinking has stopped being useful and started being a habit. Reason 3. Your brain overvalues social threats. Think about the last time you overanalyzed something you said in a group chat or a meeting. Chances are nobody else even remembered it by the next day. But your brain reacted as though your social standing was genuinely at risk. From an evolutionary standpoint, this actually makes a strange kind of sense. For most of human history, being excluded from the group wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. So your brain still treats a slightly awkward comment with almost the same intensity it would treat actual physical danger. Researchers studying social cognition have found that people consistently overestimate how much others notice and judge their small mistakes, something sometimes called the spotlight effect. You think you're standing under a spotlight, everyone else barely glanced your way. Reason 4. Overthinking gives you a false sense of control. Here's something that rarely gets talked about. A lot of overthinking isn't really about finding an answer. It's about feeling like you're doing something in a situation where you actually have very little control. If a decision feels uncertain, running it through your head over and over creates the illusion of taking action, even though nothing has actually changed. It's a bit like shaking a vending machine that ate your dollar. The shaking doesn't get your snack back, but it feels better than standing there doing nothing. The mind does something similar with uncertainty. It keeps shaking the thought, hoping something will drop out, even when the machine was never going to give anything back through force. Reason 5. Your inner voice narrates instead of just thinking. Try this quick experiment. Notice the difference between simply having a thought and narrating it to yourself in full sentences. I wonder if that email came off as rude, is a passing thought. Oh my gosh, why did I phrase it that way? They're definitely going to think I'm being difficult. I should have reread it before sending. This is going to be a whole thing, is a narration, and narrations are much stickier than thoughts. Cognitive psychologists sometimes describe this as the difference between having a thought and fusing with a thought, becoming so wrapped up in the internal storyline that you stop noticing it's just mental noise rather than something actually happening. The words themselves add momentum, the way a story keeps building even after the interesting part is already over. Reason 6. You never gave the thought a place to land. Most people try to stop overthinking by pushing the thought away, which usually backfires the same way trying not to think about something always does. A more useful approach, borrowed from acceptance-based therapy models, is to give the thought somewhere to go instead of somewhere to disappear. Keep a small note on your phone, titled simply Loop List. When your mind starts circling something, write one line describing it and set it down. You're not solving it and you're not suppressing it. You're just telling your brain, this has been recorded. You don't have to keep holding on to it to make sure it isn't lost. It sounds almost too small to matter, but the brain treats recorded somewhere very differently than unresolved and floating. None of this means you'll never overthink again. Your brain will probably open a new tab tomorrow about something completely unrelated. But now you actually know what's happening when it does. A tab that won't close, a false sense of control, a narration instead of a thought. Which one of these sounds most like what happens in your head? I'd honestly love to know in the comments. If this gave you a new way to look at your own thinking, give it a like, subscribe for more of these, and I'll catch you in the next one.